Hi, Judy. I was wondering, what are some examples of statuses, either ascribed or achieved, that you have? Would you say that any of these statuses stand out above the others as your master status? And if so, has this master status ever either prevented you or aided you in achieving something like a goal or an accomplishment? Thank you.
Great question, Carter. I would say my achieved statuses would be a college student, an aspiring nursing student, the quiet one, and the one to speak to whenever you have something on your mind. For ascribed statuses, Asian American, Asian Mexican American, female, a daughter, and an aunt. As for my master status, I would say it would be Asian American. And the reason that I say Asian American rather than Asian American woman is because I have been confronted more in regards to my race rather than my sex. And Asian American is just only half of who I am genetically. I am Asian Mexican American. My mom is from China and my dad is from Mexico. And I have taken more physical appearance from my mom rather than my dad. And because of that, there are many times that I have to prove myself that I'm not just Asian, I'm also Mexican. Some of the remarks would be, oh, she's just Asian, or something that connects to Asian culture or Chinese culture, like, what's your favorite Chinese dish, or do you speak Chinese? I have never once been asked or have been commented on Hispanic culture or Mexican culture, and because of that, there are many times where I have to prove myself I'm also Mexican. I'm not just one ethnicity or one race. And one way that I have been proven was having my dad next to me. And this will happen when we go to Mexico and I visit family members. They will first look at me initially as, oh, she's just Asian, but when my dad introduces me as his daughter, they say, oh, she's part of us. She's one of us. And another way that I had to prove myself was to speak Spanish. But although speaking Spanish does not automatically make you Hispanic or someone with Hispanic descendant, but speaking Spanish has broken down a barrier for many circumstances. And the last one would be having some of my Hispanic friends introduce me as Asian Mexican American to other people or to their friends. I initially don't want to introduce myself as Asian Mexican American, as it might come across as self-absorbent, and that's not the first impression I want to make. As for a solution or advice, I don't think there's a one-fit-all solution. As for an advice for a person who is meeting someone who potentially has more than one race or one ethnicity, I would say get to know them more and know their backstory. Don't try to give them a label or status, because humans are complex and so are their statuses. As for someone who is of mixed race, I would say maybe if you know the language, you could speak it, and that could signal the other person who may know the language, saying, hey, we have this connection. And that could lead to a question of, oh, where are your parents from? And that could lead to a clarity of between two parties. Hi Avery. I have a question. What kind of roles do you find yourself identifying with? Have you ever been in conflict with them? Are you or were you able to resolve the conflict or conflicts?
Hi Judy, thank you for your questions. So to start off with my answer, I think I'm going to start by kind of defining what roles and role conflict are. So roles are the kind of like our place in the scheme of things. So one of the roles I identify with is student, which means my job is to go to school and learn. Like that's what my role is. Another role I like to have is daughter, and so my role there is to just be a daughter, respect my parents, do what they want me to do. Um, and role conflict is kind of when, like, at least in my example, in my answer, I'm going to talk about how one role and another role kind of mesh and like don't really work well together. Um, and so yeah, I'm gonna identify more roles that I identify with. I like to include that I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a partner, I'm a student, I'm a coach, I'm a friend, I'm a bunch of things. And I've had a few complications when it comes to kind of maintaining all these roles in regards to them crossing lines within each other and meshing together. Um, so my most consistent complication I find myself having is between my roles of being a daughter and my role of being a partner. I find myself spending more time with my partner, which ultimately upsets my parents because I can't do the same for them, and vice versa. If I spend more time with my parents and less time with my partner, then he feels neglected. And obviously, I cannot be in two spaces at once to be with them for equal time and give them equal amounts of effort into the relationship. So it's really hard, and because of this, I find myself trying to resolve this in a way that is possible and that will work, but will also make both parties happy because I do believe it is possible for this to happen. So some little things I like to do is like go grocery shopping together, have game nights, movie nights, and I have noticed this works quite a bit. There hasn't been as much tension, and there's a lot more lenience when it comes to like feeling neglected or feeling upset. And yeah, well, role conflict in general, I feel, is kind of a personal, or at least to solve it, it's kind of a personal matter because not everyone has the same roles, not everyone has the same conflict within those roles. And so I feel like it's kind of important if you do have role conflict to try and find what works best for you personally. And yeah, so for our closing question, to solve social conflict, I feel like social conflict is kind of just a big, broad statement, or like there's a lot of conflict in society because obviously society is very flawed. And so I feel like people could try and be more open-minded in the sense of respecting the differences within others who are not exactly like them. And what comes with open-mindedness is kind of being able to go with the flow. It's kind of a cause and effect thing, I say. So in order to go with the flow, you have to be open-minded. Which open-mindedness is what I would like kind of define as being able to look at something, take it in, process it, think about it, and then form an opinion instead of just having a straight up like, oh, I don't like this, and that's it. Just not even thinking about it, kind of being patient and respectful. A wide-known example of this, I would say, is political views. Obviously, that's a very hot topic at the moment because we just had the election, we had all the campaigning, and I feel like kind of political hostility is a big factor into social conflict. And I feel like if everyone was just kind of more open-minded and willing to accept and learn and process what everyone else thinks, we'd be okay. Chris, so I have a couple questions for you. What groups, either primary or secondary, do you enjoy being part of the most and why? And do you ever find the number of groups you're a part of being hard to handle, such as being a part of the university and being part of your family?
Great question, Avery. So you asked me, what groups, either it be primary or secondary, do I enjoy being a part of and why? You also asked me that if being a part of these many groups were hard to handle. specifically being a part of a university and also a part of my family at the same time. So, before I answer your questions, let's explain what these groups are first. So what is a social group? A social group consists of two or more people who regularly interact and share a sense of unity and common identity. They see each other often and consider themselves a part of this group. These members can range from family members to members of a sports team, your neighbors, or even co-workers at a workplace. So what is a primary group specifically? Primary groups are small and characterized by close, personal, and intimate relationships. These relationships can last a long time. These members could include your family, childhood friends, or even romantic lovers. What is a secondary group? Secondary groups comprise relatively impersonal and temporary relationships that can be found in employment or educational settings. So for example, our sociology class itself would be a secondary group. So what's the difference between these two groups really? So the biggest difference are the relationships that exist within them. While primary groups might be a more face-to-face, intimate relationships, your secondary groups are usually people who, would see here and there and people you would see not too often. To answer your first question, which group do I enjoy being a part of most? That's kind of hard to say because I believe both primary and secondary groups play a big role in how we as human beings can learn how to interact and socialize with each other. So if I were to choose one, I would say primary group because my primary group would consist of my family members and childhood friends, people who I've known for a really long time. And because I've known these people for so long, I would say that these people were the main big basis. These are the main group that really built who I am today. Because of these people and because of their influence on my early life growing up, I feel like their influence has made me who I am today. As for secondary groups, I wouldn't say you should choose one over the other. I would say secondary groups are also very important. These are people that you can meet in your workplace, and these are also people you can meet in school, for example. So let's take our sociology class, for example, or let's just say colleges, for example. So transitioning from high school to college is a very big transition, and the reason why I would like to use this comparison is because high school, you mostly have your friends. You have your solidified friend groups, you have people you know, and these are probably people you've known for only the 4 years of high school, or it could have been even before that. So you already know these people. I would say this could be sort of a primary group. You're very close. When you transition to college, everyone goes sort of their own path. You don't know if your friends will also follow you to the same college. It's a new world. It's the next transition into adulthood. And the reason why I make this comparison is because I had this experience myself. I used to go to this school in Skokie in a suburb. I didn't know anyone there. It was pretty hard making friends because I was supposed to go to another high school, but I did make friends. So I did meet people throughout that 4-year time span. But transitioning to college, I'm completely new, all over again. I have to meet all these people again. So I feel like it's definitely important to meet new people and build up on those relationships in those secondary groups. To answer your second question, do I find it hard being a part of these groups? As of right now, no. I say that it's not too hard to be a part of a university and my family at the same time. But I could probably think of a situation where that could affect me in some sort of way. So if I were to also be a part of a university. So I believe one of the best ways or a great way to solve or alleviate social conflict would be is to understand what that conflict is. Once you understand what that conflict is, you can get a grasp of the situation, and from there you should be able to communicate with those people and those who are in the opposition. You know, you guys can brainstorm resolutions from there, and from that point on determine the best possible solution. Communication is definitely key here. Hey Carter, Chris here. So a few questions for you. Has there ever been a time where status inconsistency has affected your life, either it be negative or positive? Do you agree that status inconsistency is not a combination of statuses itself, but how others perceive a particular combination of statuses? And if status inconsistency is considered a tricky situation by sociologists, can you ever think of a situation where it can benefit someone, either it be you or something that you yourself have seen?
Those are some great questions, Chris. Before I answer them, though, let me define what status inconsistency is. So status inconsistency is when an individual has multiple statuses that in combination with one another, they just don't match up with social expectations. So this could be, one example of this could be when a grown man goes back to school and is in a college classroom with a group of other like 20-year-old students. This is an inconsistency because as a student, he should be a young person, but as an adult, you would expect him to be at like an occupation or a job and not in a classroom. So these two statuses don't match up. To answer the first question about whether or not I've experienced status inconsistency, I would completely have to say yes. So I'm majoring in nursing, and what this means is that whenever anybody asks me what I'm going into in school, it always is followed by them asking why I'm stopping short. Because I'm a male going into the health career, it's expected that I should go all the way to the top to become a surgeon or a doctor, because being a nurse is seen as a more feminine job. While I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a negative impact on my life, I would for sure say that this status inconsistency between my sex and my occupation has led to a lot of annoyances in my life, because I would rather be able to just express myself and say what I want to do and have it be the end of the line, but because of these societal expectations, I really need to like reaffirm that it's okay that I'm going into nursing even if I am a guy. So it's more of an annoyance than a negative. For the second question, I would have to say that status inconsistency really comes from societal expectations. I do not think at all that it's a problem between statuses clashing and not working with one another. I think it's just because people, like you said, from like outside perspectives, perceive different combinations of statuses as weird or awkward. To go back to the example I gave for the last answer, with me going into nursing as a male, there's nothing stopping me from doing so. There's no physical barriers that are keeping me back from going out and having this be my occupation. However, there are problems when people look at me and they may think down on me. They think, oh, it's kind of weird that he's a guy who's going into nursing, or they think that I'm not applying myself because I'm stopping short, even if that's not true, even if that's just the career I want to have. So while it may seem that status inconsistency could come from two different statuses not working together, I would for sure say that it's definitely from just outside perspective and from people deciding that different statuses don't work. The last question is really interesting, and I really thought about it for a long time, trying to think of if there's any scenarios where somebody could benefit from status inconsistency, but after a long while, I kind of just had to give up because I couldn't think of anything. Status inconsistencies can vary in how badly it affects a person, from being a minor inconvenience to me, because going back multiple times, like I said, because I'm a male going into nursing, people might question it, they might think it's weird, but there's nothing that'll really do to stop me. So it can vary from that being just like it's a little bit of a botherance, to something as big as women trying to get into the military or jobs like in that military field can actually have a huge issue because a lot of men don't think that women have what it takes to be in the military. Because they have their sex as one of their statuses, it's just pushed on them that they shouldn't be able to go into military, and this causes a huge hassle in their life, and it could actually stop them from going into this occupation. or it's not stop, but it could discourage them from going into it from all the trouble that they have to do to get to their positions. So I can't really think of any examples where it would benefit the person, but it was a really interesting question, and I would love for anybody to think about this and maybe like see if you could think of something, because I just couldn't personally. Some advice that I would give to anybody who's dealing with status inconsistency is really to just, and I say this in the nicest way possible, just don't let it affect you. Like I said before, when answering his second question, status inconsistency isn't a big actual problem that comes from actually having two statuses. It's an issue that stems from societal expectations, and these aren't things that you can control. Maybe one day, as we grow and as life gets more mature, and as we realize that sex and other statuses like age don't affect the capabilities of somebody has, doesn't limit them or make them worse, I think one day status inconsistencies may begin to go away on their own. But until then, I think it's important to just realize that you can do whatever you want to. You might get backlash, you might get people looking down on you, it might be more difficult for you to do it because of your status. But just keep in mind that if you really want to do something, you can.